Hi, Anne. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Lorena. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see your face.
Yes, good to see you too. It's been too long.
Definitely. So, today, Anne, I wanted to ask you about your work. You're currently an appellate clerk. Is that right?
Yes, right. At the intermediate appellate court in my state. We handle appeals from the trial court in all areas. It can be criminal law, civil law, divorces, child custody, anything
Okay.
comes to us.
So, what are you responsible for as a clerk?
Like I said, we get cases from all of the trial courts in my state. It can be any number of issues that arise in a given case. And when the different parties present a question to the appellate court, the judge I work for is assigned to a panel of three judges who decides who wins and who loses, essentially. So, as one of his law clerks, I review the records from these cases, I research the legal issues, and I work on drafting some of the written decisions that he would issue.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Is that something you've always wanted to do?
I don't think I pictured myself doing that in law school, but it does definitely suit my strengths and weaknesses as a lawyer.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before you were at the appellate court, you were a public defender. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, sure. So I was a public defender, and in my office, I did almost entirely appellate work. Is essentially the other side of the bench. Instead of deciding the cases, I was working as one of the parties and advocating for my client's interests in the appellate court. So this was all criminal law. It was all people who had been convicted of a crime or who had pled guilty of a crime and were appealing to the appellate court, arguing that there had been some sort of legal error at their trial, that there hadn't been sufficient evidence to convict them. Perhaps there was like a sentencing error, any number of issues that we could raise. So my job was definitely more advocating for the one position rather than looking at both sides and deciding which one was legally correct.
Oh, okay. That's so
Mhm.
interesting. So then you would have to write briefs and you do the oral arguments.
Right, exactly. So oral arguments were always a lot of fun, nerve-wracking,
Right.
definitely, but fun. It's a chance to have like a conversation with the three judges. That's called a panel, the panel of judges who would be deciding your case. So um, it was always kind of a fun exercise to narrow down which issues you really wanted to present to the judges, how to use your time, and really to practice the volley, the back and forth. They're always interrupting you with questions, and you need to anticipate what they want to hear, anticipate the problems they're going to have with your argument, and then just be kind of quick on your feet to respond.
Oh, yeah. The true lawyer's, I don't want to say dilemma. I guess it's what we've
It's
always,
our bread and butter.
yeah, exactly. Quick on the
Yeah,
feet. Think of something
right.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how often would you be in front of the panel doing oral arguments, would you say?
Oh, not very often at all. They only even sat in our district. There are a few districts throughout the states. They only sit there a few times a year.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
then the rest of the time you would be researching the issue, writing about it, submitting the briefs or responding.
right. And a lot of the cases were also submitted without oral argument. You can choose
Okay.
whether you want to orally argue the case, and that's kind of a little bit of a strategic decision in and of itself. You kind of wonder about the strengths and weaknesses of your case. Maybe if it's a new issue or something novel or particularly interesting or something in the record that you don't think is going to come across as clearly in writing, but if you can get it in front of them, you can make your point a little easier. So I ended up submitting a lot of cases without oral argument too when
Oh,
I was a
okay.
public defender.
So I think a common, I don't know if it's misconception or it's true, but that public defenders have large caseloads. On the appellate team, I guess I'll call it, what was your caseload like?
Gosh. I really, it was probably around 20 at a time that were at various stages.
Okay.
And then in addition to appellate work, I did do some like trial work as well, mostly like plea cases.
Hmm.
And if we won on appeal and got a new sentencing hearing or something like that, then I would handle that as well.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
That's really cool. And I think
Mhm.
I remember you telling me one time that the office you worked in, was it called, it was horizontal representation. So there
Yeah.
were, could you tell us more about how that works?
Yeah, sure. So the well, let's start by what the opposite is. So, if there's vertical representation, what that means is that you'll have one lawyer who is representing you from the beginning to the end of your
Hmm.
case. So, that might mean a preliminary hearing. Then, after that, there's trial and all the negotiating and plea bargaining that happens before trial. And then there's appellate proceedings if it comes down to that. So, in a vertical situation, you would have one lawyer representing the client from start to finish.
Okay.
Our office divided the cases into different sections where you'd have one attorney represent the client at the preliminary hearing level, another handles all the trial proceedings, and then another, like me, would handle anything that would come up on appeal.
Okay.
So it was, you really had to, we really relied on each other, the other lawyers, to develop a case,
Hmm.
spot the issues, make sure issues are preserved for appeal, or, make sure things are developed on the record for whoever gets the case after you.
Right. Wow, that sounds difficult. Our office does vertical representation, so we're with the client
Yeah.
from beginning to end, which is nice. Just to get to know the client, you're kind of prepping each stage. We don't do our own appellate work. We do have a team that does appellate issues, but
Mhm.
it's interesting when you told me about the horizontal representation.
Yeah.
I was kind of interested to know more about that. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I think there are there are definitely advantages to having a history with a client,
Hmm.
and being able to choose at the beginning where you want the case to go.
Hmm.
And then you also probably don't have your appellate attorneys maybe second guessing you a
Right.
little bit after the fact.
Right.
Which, like I said, I did do a few trial things, not much when I
Hmm.
was there, just like helping out when there were high caseloads in the trial division. And it really does help instead of to know what it feels like to be in that position
Hmm.
when you're trying to, it's a lot more on your feet. Like we were saying earlier, quick back and forth, except day to day, you don't get like months to prepare for your argument.
Right. That's so true.
One of the judges I have talked to actually compared trial work to playing a basketball game where like everyone's running around doing something different. You're keeping track of many different things at one time and trying to focus on a lot of things at once. But appellate law is a little bit more like playing a game of pool or billiards, where
Okay.
like you make a move, you stop, you study, you weigh out all
Yeah.
the different options and take your time before you make another move.
I like
So
that analogy or those
yeah,
analogies. Yeah, that makes sense because
yeah.
some days I feel like I'm on a basketball court and falling flat on my face. Just kidding. No, it's good. So before you became a public defender, what did you do before that? Like as
Uh,
a job?
yeah. I spent a year clerking, except for at trial court.
Okay.
Similar to what I do now in terms of like reading parties' pleadings and researching legal issues. But I would be, helping out a trial court judge. And then it was a little bit more like the basketball game type of
Hmm.
thing where someone makes that objection in the middle of trial and you're trying to like game it out as quickly as possible and you're whispering at the bench and
Right.
stuff like that to come to your decisions rather than having the luxury of time to suss it all out.
Yeah. That's awesome. So it sounds like you've had a wide range of experience along the trial and appellate levels. So that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's having that range is a good way to kind of narrow down what you like to do and what you're good at doing and how you can make those things interact to what you actually end up doing every day.
Definitely. So is the position you have now, is that a long-term position, or because a lot of clerkships maybe are a year, 2 years, but I know there are longer ones. So what's yours like? Do you know, I guess?
Hopefully longer.
Yeah.
I didn't interview for like a set term of a year or anything like that. I've been at the office for the judge I'm working for a little over a year now. And I really like it. I'd like to keep doing it for several years or
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah,
At this
definitely.
point.
Yeah.
All of the people I work with for my judge have been doing it for years too, and they're viewing it more as a career thing. But like you said, there are people who do it for a year or 2 years, usually like right after law school as kind of an intermediary type position.
Yeah. Do you have some people who clerk for your judge or judges in, I guess, in the court? Because there's more than your judge, right? There's a panel, you said.
Right.
So are there some that just came right out of law school that are just there for a year, or are they mostly long term?
There are about 15 judges on our court, and everyone
Okay.
has around like 4 or 5 clerks. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I do believe there are people that did come right out of law school, and I think it's just a mix. I don't know
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
So do you work with like 3 other law clerks for your judge, or yeah.
Yes, so my judge has 5 clerks total, and right now we're all remote.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
prior to the pandemic, there were 3 of us who worked in the same office as him and 2 who were remote.
Okay.
So there are 5 of us in the office, and we can kind of like bounce questions off each other. But just the way the work is divided, I might have case number 1 and he has case number 2, et cetera. We're not like collaborating on each case.
Okay. Okay. So you all have your own caseload, really,
Right.
kind of.
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool. Have you always wanted to be an attorney, Anne?
Yeah, I decided at a really young age that I wanted to be an attorney before I really knew what an attorney was. I remember I was in like 4th grade. I'm the first lawyer in my family. I didn't know any lawyers. Like, I had no idea. But I remember watching a TV show and seeing lawyers, and I went to my mom and said, I've decided what I want to be when I grow up. I'm going to be an attorney. And it's a little funny because it wasn't like watching Law and Order or Perry Mason or
Right.
something with like an exciting courtroom reveal or anything like that. The show I was watching had a bunch of people in suits sitting at like a huge conference table that was covered in stacks of paper that they were like highlighting
Yeah.
and like reading and looking for something important or something. And at that point in my life, I loved writing and I loved reading. I went to the library once a week and
Oh, wow.
got a new stack of books and all that. So I saw these people doing this for a living and I was
Yeah.
like, I want to do that. That looks awesome.
That is so
Um,
funny.
yeah,
I
it was
love it.
arguably not the exciting part of lawyering. But now here I am, 20 years later, and I do read stacks of paper all day and write about them.
Living
So
the dream.
yeah, it worked out.
That is so cool. It's funny that a TV show kind of inspired you, because a TV show inspired me.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to be a lawyer because I would watch Matlock with my grandma.
Nice.
But it was the trial, theatrics and
Yeah.
solving that murder. And I
Being
being what?
being like more clever than everyone else in
Yeah,
the
right. And
room.
like
Yeah, yeah,
figuring it out with the actual person on the stand, kind of the killers
yeah,
on the stand. And so I think I was drawn to the theatrics, but I was kind of hesitant to go that way because I knew a lot of the reality was the big
yeah,
stacks of paper, the writing. So
yeah.
that
Did you have any lawyers in your family who were able to, or that you knew that were able to tell you about it?
I did have a second cousin who he was an attorney, I think maybe since I was a teenager. And I always loved hearing his stories. He was a DA in San Francisco, and I liked hearing, the courtroom stories and
Yeah,
stuff. So I could talk to
war
him about
stories.
it. Yeah, the war stories.
Yeah,
But it's funny because, again, I kind of put that on the back burner because I was like, oh, that's not realistic, or I'm not going to be able to write that much. But
Hmm.
so I did have somebody not too close who was an attorney, but I was able to kind of turn to him when I finally decided I want to be an attorney. Like, okay, what do I need to
Yeah.
do to get into law school? That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So that was cool. But
Cool.
it's really neat to hear, like, at the age of, well, how old was that in fourth grade? Like 10, maybe 9,
10-ish.
10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to know yourself enough to be like, I like reading, I like writing, and that looks fun. That's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So, I guess what are the steps that you took to get to where you are now in being an attorney?
Um, well, I guess in like high school, I was already thinking like past undergrad to law school. So I joined our like forensics team, the speech and debate, and I competed in speech tournaments and kind of worked on public speaking and really developed that skill. Undergrad, I kind of focused on taking some law classes, but I was actually an anthropology major,
That's awesome.
cultural anthropology. And it actually helps a lot as a lawyer because lawyering is a lot of dealing with people. And especially studying anthropology just gives you a better lens to understand other people, why they might make the choices that they do, and kind of the cultural forces that are at play whenever we make whatever decisions we want to make.
Yeah.
So I remember in undergrad, I read a bunch of ethnographies, which are books written by anthropologists who are immersed in and studying a culture. But I read a bunch of ethnographies that were about people who were in gangs or like low income communities and how forming fictive kinships to support each other,
Yeah.
or people who like I read one that was in a high security prison, another one that was about like a prostitution community. There are like lots of different areas to study anthropology.
Yeah.
Going into the major, you kind of think of like going to study Africa and stuff
Right.
like that. But you
Yeah.
can do anthropology anywhere. So it gave me, I should say, a really interesting perspective on some of the people that I would end up representing as a public defender.
Yeah.
And it kind of opens your eyes to, how people get to where they are. And it makes it a little easier to also put yourself in someone else's shoes, which is always, I think, important as a lawyer, no matter what kind of law you practice. You're
Yeah.
trying to advocate for a position that you might not be in yourself or you might not personally support. So
Yeah.
studying that in undergrad, I think, has been really helpful as I've developed my law career.
Yeah. That's awesome because I think a lot of times people think, oh, I have to be a poli sci major or I have to be
Yeah.
pre law even. And that's what something I love about law school and being an attorney is that you don't have, there's not a specific graduate or undergrad
Right.
degree that you have to get. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think anthropology is not something I would have first thought about, but it makes so much sense because you work with so many different people.
Right.
And yeah, being able to put yourself in their perspective is so huge.
Yeah. And I remember when I was in undergrad, one of the ethnographies I read was about a pro life community in North Dakota.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So she talked a lot about like, she learned about the reasons that women were pro life in this community and reasons that families gave for being pro life, and how that manifested when an abortion clinic was going to move into the town and how people were protesting about it and what their motivations were. So I read that book. I read some other research about like social justice type movements in particular. And that was a really interesting perspective as I was applying to law school because it made me think about going into things like advocacy. Because if you want to work for the Women's Law Project in the ACLU, then maybe you need to understand, all these different perspectives that you're going to be dealing with or even up against when you're litigating reproductive rights, for example.
Right. Yeah. No, that's so interesting. And how did you decide which law school you were going to go to?
Money.
Right?
Yes,
Sweet.
I knew even in high school that I wanted to do public service. I wanted to work for a nonprofit or government or something along those
Yeah.
lines. So I knew going in that I wasn't going to be, a hotshot lawyer who was making $1 million a year, whatever the
Right.
case may be. So when I chose my law school and when I chose my undergrad, actually, it was almost entirely based on where the scholarship money was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which,
followed the money.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
that's, I think, a good tactic, especially for a career like law where people take out a lot of debt, because it really just, the less debt you have, the more opportunities you have. I haven't had to feel like I need to pursue a higher paying job that I wouldn't enjoy doing
Right.
just because I have this mountain of debt behind me.
Right.
I have the ability to work in public service if I want to for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
And
That's huge. I mean, I don't know, that debt, especially from law school, can just almost be suffocating.
it is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Anne, I heard you're a runner. Can you tell us when you started running?
Well, I first started after law school, after taking the bar. I guess I'm a person who needs like accomplishments, progress, things like that that I can measure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So after taking the bar exam, that was the first time in my life I was no longer in school. There wasn't like a final exam or a paper or anything like that to be working towards and like having that sense of accomplishment. So I took up running because lots of benchmarks there. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, I started using the Couch to 5K app, which is like interval training. I had never in my life run a mile without stopping
Uh-huh.
before then. So it was like a long journey to get to the point where I could run for 3.1 miles without stopping. And
Yeah.
then once you do that, you can change your goal to do it in a certain time period. And then I changed it to run a 10K. And then I
Yeah.
changed it to run a half marathon. And then I said, running is terrible. I'm never doing this again. So I took like a year off.
Oh, really?
Um,
I didn't know that.
yeah, I did. I
Wow.
did. And then the pandemic happened.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't go to the gym. I had, started doing other things instead of running, but couldn't do those anymore. So this year I've been getting back out there and trying to build up my mileage again.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am so inspired by your running. I remember when we were in Chicago and you just ran around the city and explored and came back and told us all about it. So,
Oh, it's so great.
yeah, that was so inspiring to me. And
Yeah.
I think it's cool that you found a new benchmark to achieve. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It was a great way to learn more about my city too, because we have like river trails and stuff like that. So,
yeah,
if ever you're bored, you can go find a different trail and do a few miles.
yeah, that's
Also, like now when I drive places, I'll be passing signs on the roadway that are like, next rest stop, 5 miles or whatever. And I'm like, oh, if the car breaks down, I can get there.
oh my
Like, it
gosh, that's so,
doesn't seem that
that is so
right.
handy to have. Yeah, just be like, I
Yeah,
know I can
yeah.
run that far if I have to.
Right. Yeah. This excellent side effect of like lots of things you do for fitness is like, okay, now I know I can take care of myself in this situation.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true. Well, and it's just a different way of exploring. Like you see so much more on the
Right.
ground running than you do in a car.
Yes, absolutely. You can go places that you can't drive to, that
Yeah.
takes your time.
Yeah. And then so you mentioned doing did you say a 5K and a 10K
Yeah. And
and
then a half
a half
marathon.
marathon? Okay.
Hmm.
So that was before the pandemic, so you actually signed up for it, showed up for the day of the
Yeah.
race. Yeah. What
Got
was
the
that
medal and
like?
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's it like to, I don't know, get ready for a race, I guess?
Well, like the biggest one I did was the half marathon. I found a beginner training program that was like 12 weeks long. Um, and it just kind of built up your mileage each week. So again, it was like something you can tick off, something I'm accomplishing. Like this week
Yeah.
I did 9 miles. Next week I'm going to do 10 miles in my long run.
Yeah.
You can keep track of your pace, which is really great. And it was also a really good way to learn my city. Because if you're doing a 10-mile training run, you don't want to like be in your neighborhood running the same 2 blocks for
People
an
start
hour and a
looking
half.
at you. They're like, what are you running from?
Yeah.
In circles.
Super boring.
Yeah. That's
So when
funny.
I was doing those, I would like download audiobooks and find a nice long trail to run or a different part of the city. And, you can listen to something interesting and see places you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And then the payoff at the end doing the actual marathon was great because, the streets are shut down. So there are areas that, you're there for work every day or travel
Yeah.
to with friends and you get to see them from a whole different perspective. There are hundreds of people around you too. It's like a great sense of community and it's a way to explore.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you kind of took running and started exploring different athletic activities. I also heard you took up roller derby. What got you
Hell
into
yeah.
that?
Yeah, that was actually kind of why I stopped running because roller derby is so much fun.
Yeah.
I had started this like getting into fitness thing. I had never been a fitness person before I started running.
Uh-huh.
So after doing that, I wanted to explore some new things and I wanted to make some friends. And I wanted to play on a team sport. I had never done a team sport before in my entire life, so I
Really?
had no
Yeah.
idea what it was like. And I learned about our city's roller derby league. So I went and I watched a bunch of their games, and it looked so cool. Because skating is fun. I had
Yeah.
skated on like inlines as a kid, and it was always kind of cool just rolling around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But also, it's a sport that really celebrates women and female identified people.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of diversity in the sport. You see people of all shapes and sizes, and it's the kind of thing where no matter what you look like, what your body type is like, there are advantages and there are disadvantages
That's
to being that on the track.
that's really cool.
So
I
there's
never thought of that.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of those things where there's like really just room for everyone to, kind of excel and build their skills in a unique way to add to what your team is trying to do. So
Yeah.
it was a ton of fun. I got into that. I went to the tryouts and I was all alone and I was very nervous, but I met some very cool people. We're all still, still friends with them, obviously, because we still are in a league together.
Yeah.
Trained, learned how to skate. I had never played on quad skates before and it's hard.
Yeah. It sounds hard.
Yeah, it's a constant learning
Oh my
process.
gosh.
Yeah. Even, this past summer during the pandemic, I was able to go out and skate a lot on like paved trails. So that's a good way to stay active and work on your skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so were you able to compete um, before the pandemic started?
Yeah, I had one season before the pandemic started. We were about to start our second one
Oh, yeah.
when everything hit, and we ended up canceling the season.
Yeah.
But the first season was great, definitely a learning experience. You're
Yeah.
really relying on the people who have been playing for a long time to be like, nope, put yourself here, go there,
Right.
while you try to develop that skill of like seeing where people are and learning where you need to be to help them or to, hinder your opponents.
Yeah.
It also, I think, forced me to be a little more well-rounded with fitness, which I really appreciate. Because like running, I didn't do any strength training, which I probably should have. But I was really just using only running as my exercise.
Yeah.
when I started roller derby, I also ended up starting strength training, and working on some like mobility stuff because like if you know how to skate really well, but you're not strong enough to hold someone back while
Right.
you're on skates, then,
What's the
it's
point?
not going to go as well.
Right.
Right. So I noticed a big change in my game and my skills when I started lifting weights. So that was helpful. And it's
Awesome.
also now in the off season, this unplanned off season,
Yeah.
helped with like running because the same muscles or the same imbalances that you develop when you're just running can be helped with weightlifting. So,
Yeah. What kind of weightlifting do you like to do?
well, before I used to, like to go to the gym and do like squats and hip thrusts and Romanian deadlifts and stuff like that. But now, since I'm in my apartment all alone, I have to work on some like more body weight focused routines. So it was a
Yeah.
lot of going online and finding different ways to work out and figuring out what I can fit into my little apartment to come up
Right.
with a routine. Yeah.
It's takes skill, definitely. Little Tetris
Yeah.
skill. But that's awesome. I just love how you've evolved like in your workouts and exercising, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah. The other great thing about roller derby is, like I said, it's this community of awesome women, and all of them are like making sure to take the time to do this thing that's really just for them. It's like just for me, for my well-being, for my like personal development, and to form friendships and bonds and a personal sense of accomplishment, and like know that I'm not just my entire life isn't just being a lawyer, or my entire life isn't just being a mom, or my entire life isn't just being a teacher, or, whatever it is. It's
Right.
really making sure you take the time to appreciate yourself and grow yourself as a human being,
That's
which is,
so cool. And it sounds like you get to meet a lot of different people from different walks of life and,
yeah,
different professions. And that's really cool.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just think of the only experience I have with roller derby is what I've seen on TV, and it looks really awesome. But I'd be intimidated to go try out. So
Yeah,
kudos to you. Good
scary.
job. That's awesome.
Thank you. You
Yeah.
learn just so much about yourself this way too. It was another thing about it is that you get like real comfortable with failure real fast
Yeah.
because like um it's real easy to fail when you've got like wheels strapped to your feet.
Right.
Like I spent half the practice on the ground, and it's just like you have to get used to that feeling. Like
Yeah.
this didn't go well and I just have to get back up and try it again. Or,
Yeah.
it takes me months to learn this skill, but eventually I'm going to do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think sometimes, especially for people who've succeeded so much or have done well in school, failure is
Hmm.
really scary. And to be able to do it in kind of a safe place, like, yeah, you're going to have bumps and bruises and it's going to hurt, but in the end, you get up again and then you get
Right.
to see like the results of the failure. So
Yes, absolutely.
that's awesome. That's so cool, Anne. Looking to the future, what are you living forward to?
Oh, I've been thinking about this one a lot since you told me about this podcast. Um, it's hard to say because I think, like I said, I was in fourth grade and I saw those stacks of papers and I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I've gotten here. And I think up until this point in my life, I pictured myself as someone who would be a live to work type person. And I've recently discovered that I like having a life outside of work. I like,
Yeah.
being a more well-rounded person. I like having a social life. I like focusing on physical fitness. I like having hobbies. And those are all things that it's really easy to neglect when you're in law school or when you're a young lawyer and you're learning how to do those things. So when I think about the next 5 years, for example, I really want to focus on who Anne is outside of being a lawyer. So I
Awesome.
want to be the best roller derby player I can be. I
Yeah.
want to, keep lifting weights back when we're allowed to do that again.
Right. Soon,
I
hopefully.
want, yes, soon. I want to travel more. I haven't done nearly enough traveling in
Yeah.
my life. So I want to get out there more. I want to meet new people,
Yeah.
meet interesting people, and form connections that way. I've thought about writing a novel because,
Ooh.
like I said, when I was a kid, I was always reading novels. And this year in pandemic land, I've read lots and lots of murder mysteries. And like that really interests me, the idea
Ooh,
of
fun.
writing one myself. It was something that when I was a kid, I always also kind of was like, you could be a writer, you could be Agatha Christie. So
Yeah. That's
that's
awesome.
something I might do.
That's so exciting. I can see so much in your future, and I am excited to see you as you continue to be Anne and discover your hobbies. I'll definitely have to come watch you in your roller derby when the season's started, and I'm definitely going to follow up on that. So,
Yes, do
yeah.
it.
How do you love yourself now?
I think the main way that I love myself now is through working on things like running and skating and weightlifting and just basically all these aspects of physical fitness that I've kind of discovered over the past couple years. When I was a kid, I was never athletic, and I just kind of thought of myself as not athletic at all, not coordinated, not strong, don't have endurance, and that was just kind of who I was. So it was really nice to find out after I started trying that I do have that capability in
Mm-hmm.
me and that, my body is capable of doing these things that I always thought it couldn't do. So I love myself by kind of working on these things, pushing myself to do more, and kind of proving to myself what I am capable of. So that could be like running a new distance or at a new time or mastering some new skill on skates or lifting a new weight, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's so awesome. So I don't know if you knew this, but I used to be a camp counselor over the summers, and I really liked playing games. The campfire games. I don't know if you've ever been to camp before.
Yeah, Girl Scout camp.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would want to play a game with you. I think it's called Rapid Fire. So I have a bunch of questions, and I'm going to set the timer for a minute, and I want to see how many questions you can answer in a minute. And you are the first person, so you get to set the bar. No
Okay.
pressure.
It's not like trivia, is it?
No, you'll see. But you'll be
Okay.
fine. Just rapid fire.
Okay.
You should be able to answer them. It's not like
I should
random
know.
craziness,
Okay.
well, it's random, but you'll see. So,
Okay.
I'm gonna set the timer for a minute. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. What's your philosophy about work?
It should pay the bills and be fulfilling, but not take over your life.
Nice. What's the last book you read?
I read like 50 some books this year and I'm blanking on what the last one was. I'll tell you what my favorite was
Do that,
this
yeah.
year. It was The Silent Patient by Alex
Ooh.
Michaelides. So, yeah.
Would you rather bake or cook?
Cook.
Ooh. Your favorite comfort food?
Chocolate.
What would your memoir be called?
Um, something about being crotchety, I guess.
What would your superpower be?
Mind reading.
Nice. Time's up. Let's
That was
see.
a fast minute.
Right. So we got so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's really good. Especially being put on the spot like that.
Can't believe I couldn't think of a memoir name.
You don't have one, like just lingering.
Not no.
Well,
Yeah.
now you're gonna have
I
to
have
come up
years
with
to work
one.
on it.
You prepared a few questions for me. We're gonna do the same thing. I'll set the timer, and we'll see how many I can get through in a minute. All right, ready, go.
What is your best quality?
Ooh, I'm a listener.
Okay. Which of the 7 deadly sins is you?
Gluttony.
Gluttony. What was your favorite class in school? So at any level of education.
Oh, that's a good question. I like science a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah. So
Okay.
chemistry. Yeah.
Chemistry? Okay. If you're on vacation, would you rather go to a beach or a museum?
Beach.
Beach?
Yeah.
What's your New Year's resolution? If you had to
To
pick one.
to let's see. Oh my gosh. To get 500 rides by my birthday on the Peloton.
Okay. What are you most looking forward to in 2021?
I'm most looking forward to traveling.
Yeah.
Yay! Awesome. That was fun. Those are good questions.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Well, thank you so much, Anne, for sharing with us. It's been really awesome to hear your story and just what you've learned over the years.
Thank you.
Yeah.